It is a day of anguish and anger in the United States as Americans remember the Capitol riot 1 year ago. That is when supporters of Donald Trump stormed the building in a failed attempt to prevent the confirmation of Joe Biden's electoral victory. The insurrection led to 5 deaths. About 140 members of law enforcement were injured. It also pushed a deeply polarized nation even further apart. Last hour, President Joe Biden spoke. He laid blame for the deadly violence squarely at the door of his predecessor.
For the first time in our history, a president had not just lost an election, he tried to prevent the peaceful transfer of power as a violent mob breached the Capitol. But they failed. They failed. And on this day of remembrance, we must make sure that such attack never happens again.
CBC's Magda Gabriselassie can set the scene for us there today. What else really stood out from President Biden's address and also the Vice President Kamala Harris?
Well, it was very clear. President Biden was very clear about the fact that this violent mob that attacked, stormed the Capitol last year, that they were no patriots. He described how they damaged property, attacked Capitol police officers, and as he said, hunted down members of Congress. All this fueled by the big lie of a stolen election. And President Biden was very clear when it came to laying the blame for all of that with the former president. Take a listen.
We must be absolutely clear about what is true and what is a lie. And here's the truth. The former President of the United States of America has created and spread a web of lies about the 2020 election. He's done so because he values power over principle, because he sees his own interest as more important than his country's interest, than America's interest, and because his bruised ego matters more to him than our democracy or our Constitution.
He went on to say that this is really a time where this is a battle for the soul of America. He said people really need to decide what kind of nation this is. And he talked about the importance of keeping democracy alive. The speech was quite a long one. And on the way out, he had a few more words to say. Take a listen.
It's not about whether I'm president or she's vice president. It's about the system and about somebody who decides to put himself above everything. And but I did not want to turn it into a contemporary political battle.
So we also heard from VP Kamala Harris as well. We heard her describe the fear that existed that day and how she and her staff had to barricade themselves in an office. Now, along with the president and the vice president speaking today, there are many moments many moments to mark this day. There's going to be a moment of silence midday. We know that there will be a prayer vigil as well, and these events are expected to go on all day long.
Thanks for that, Magda. That's CBC's Magda Gabriselassie outside the U.S. Capitol building. Now, we've just received a comment from former President Donald Trump, and this is his statement. I'm going to read the first bit for you. Biden, who is destroying our nation with insane policies of open borders, corrupt elections, disastrous energy policies, unconstitutional mandates, and devastating school closures, used my name today to try to further divide America. This political theater is all just a distraction for the fact Biden is completely and totally failed. There is a bit more, but that's the gist of it. And that statement put out just moments ago by former U.S. President Donald Trump. Those are the images that shocked the world 1 year ago today. As Congress prepared to certify Joe Biden's election win, Donald Trump told a nearby rally to march on the Capitol. Angry Trump supporters overwhelmed Capitol Police, stormed the building. Congressional leaders barricaded themselves inside. They waited for rescue. And when it was over, 4 people in the crowd had died. 140 officers were injured. One officer, beaten by the crowd, died of a stroke the next day, and several more would later take their own lives. Susan Ormiston is our senior correspondent in the U.S. Capitol. She's been tracking the fallout from the riot and the criminal and congressional investigation. Susan, I just shared that statement from former U.S. President Donald Trump, but you're tracking Attorney General Merrick Garland. He recommitted publicly yesterday to pursuing all of those responsible for that insurrection. So bring me up to speed on the status of the criminal investigations.
Well, Suhana, before I launch into that, I will say that President Biden this morning added to this impetus to prosecute and track those that were responsible for the riot up here. He said the lies that drove the anger and madness here a year ago have not abated. And that's really what Attorney General Merrick Garland said yesterday, that the investigation is ongoing. It's the largest, one of the largest federal criminal investigations in U.S. history. More than 700 Americans have been arrested and charged. Many, dozens, are sentenced already, sentences ranging from 30 days to 5 years in jail. Merrick Garland said they will not stop. They're still looking, the FBI, for 250 suspects, and he warned that even those who were not present on the Hill on January 6th but are suspected of conspiring or plotting the events will be tracked down and could be criminally charged. He said, "We're not done with these people yet, and the investigation continues."
Susan, I know you've spoken with Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland, who led the second impeachment against Donald Trump. Raskin was in the House that day, in the chamber, as attackers tried to break in. Just want to share with our viewers, here's what he saw and heard.
Remember very clearly the sound of boom, 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 like a battering ram as people tried to barrel their way into the House of Representatives, and members tried to go over to reinforce the wall, and then Capitol officers came in with their guns drawn and told us all to get back. But it was really chaos, and a lot of the Democrats were yelling at the Republicans, "You created this, you did this."
Congressmen and women who were in that chamber, though, that day in this Capitol do not forget what happened. But we're hearing today mostly from Democrats, including Jamie Raskin. You know, he was the lead manager on the second impeachment trial, which was all about the events of January 6th. And he continues to go along that track, trying to find those accountable. He's just published a new book called Unthinkable. Unthinkable, really a personal and political memoir, because at the time that this attack took place, Jamie Raskin lost his son to suicide just the week before, and we talked about that.
I really felt no fear for myself because I just kept feeling that we had already lost what was most precious to us and our son Tommy. The worst thing that ever could happen had already happened. And I was not afraid of these fascist insurrectionists who were trying to tear down our government. I was very angry about it.
And you know, there is still anger in the United States, Susan, we know that. But what comes next in the House investigation?
Well, important to know there's 2 parallel tracks of investigations, one the criminal one we've been talking about, and one a congressional special committee, the January 6th committee, which has interviewed hundreds of people, mostly in private. They are trying to put together a dossier of who plotted or conspired the events on January 6th. They are now saying, Jamie Raskin told us, that there will be public hearings, maybe as early as February, to lay out for Americans what they've discovered in their investigation. Of course, still hampered by some of those closest to Donald Trump who have consistently refused to testify. Here's what Raskin said about the upcoming report.
We're going to tell a riveting, compelling story to the American people about how this attack took place, who paid for it, who organized it, who coordinated it, and what are the changes we need to make in order to defend ourselves in the future. And then we're going to issue a report to the American people, too. It may be one of the most important reports ever created by Congress.
You know, there are two different views of what happened here today and this anniversary. Democrats, of course, marking it somberly, speeches in the Capitol. Many Republicans say this is a manufactured anniversary meant to punish Republicans. And Joe Biden's speech this morning was a very searing attack on the former president. He said that the rioters here today held a dagger at the throat of America, and that they came here in rage in the service of one man. He talked about them and us, which reflects the divide, but also enhances the divide in this country. So going further, we're going to hear more investigations, more testimony from that January 6th committee, and ultimately a report. But it is a divided day here on Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Susan. That's CBC senior Washington correspondent Susan Ormiston.